Good day folks, I thought I'd just make this impromptu video about some of the music to do with the Isolation Horrors that Nick was in contact with me about right at the beginning of the film idea, etc. He wanted something that sounded very much like sort of John Carpenter type music, that kind of thing. I didn't really know at the time whether or not I could embark on doing this because I was working on my Voices in My Head album, and I did suggest that as Martin Daniels was involved in this film, that maybe he's got better time and the capacity to do that, but he was insistent that I try and go forward. Well, that was inspiring, of course, and nice of him to ask, so therefore I decided, alright, I'll give it a shot. I got out the Korg and the Roly keyboards I've got, and sometimes I do this. I actually combine both synthesizers together to kind of make the tunes or noises I want to make, and there was a lot of repetition, certainly in the main theme that I embarked upon doing. It was difficult. It was a lot more difficult than I wanted it to do. There was a couple of times where I lost the keys with my fingers, the repetition. It's quite painful actually. And he did ask if he could have a version of it without the drums, and then I had to confess that the drums were there to disguise the missing beats, the missing key notes, and I had attempted and tried several times to kind of rectify that, but the more I kind of tried to do it, the more problem I got. Okay, I ended up missing more keys. So I had to go with what I had. I suppose I could have edited and played around and rejoined it or something, but it just seemed like a lot of work to achieve something that was going to last not that long. I'll play this tune anyway and see what you think. Gives you an indication of what evolved. So, as you can see, sort of driving force, definitely sinister, definitely creepy, and I think it created the design effect. I especially like seeing this piece of music introduced into the latter part of the film. Towards the end, it really sort of brings that edginess when it's really needed into the film. But when I'm making soundtrack music, like I did for Kerrigan's Wake last year, I'll get these bits of equipment out and play around and have this sense and I don't know these kind of sinister feelings and these edgy kind of sounds in my head, and then I want to emulate that, and I kind of get right into it, but I don't always stop at just making the one, so as an example, I didn't just sit there and make that particular one track. I decided to have a little play around while I was at it and setting the system up, etc. And I come across some other tunes that I made, and Nick has actually used some of these other tunes also in the film, so they'll pop up in different scenes within the film. So this was another one that I just sat and played around with. what you heard previously was, well, I've just titled the main theme. This one's called the researching theme. The thing is with incidental music, or making incidental music, as far as I'm concerned, is that you are setting themes. You're setting sort of I don't know. I suppose I've always said that my music, as far as I'm concerned, certainly was inspired by Tangerine Dream, sort of mind music, and subsequently I sort of my interpretation of that, especially when I'm doing the soundtrack work, is really based on that. I just put myself into these kind of scenarios, these feelings of being in isolated places, etc. And I don't know, albeit the fact that I wasn't composing these extra bits for anything else to an extent. It's quite interesting how Nick's managed to put them into the film, and they just work so well. So it is kind of interesting, but I think that's what happens, with a creative mind. You end up sort of getting to the point where you, I don't know, you just get absorbed in the project. So whether it's music or film, you just end up getting carried away. There's another bit, there's another section of music here. Both these sections I've played so far actually go on a little bit longer than I'm cutting them. But it's just to emphasise, what was produced. Again, this was me tinkering around again, and this one turned out to become the investigating theme. Very haunting, and them high-pitched, little whistles. I don't know if you hear them. It's creepy. And you see, with them booms going on as well, it was imperative to Nick to have these booms that came about, especially again in the main theme. They sort of it built and become repetitive, but kept growing and growing, and with intensity. A lot of fun doing that. This is a track that isn't on the or isn't in the film at all, but again was still made under the same process. I've just decided to call this track Enchantment, and again I'll just give you a little sample of it. I love them sort of scraping noises. It's interesting. I know. I remember. I was sort of Depeche Mode fan too. I remember Martin Gore having a go at banging pipes and all sorts of things. In the early stages of finding noises that could be used as sound. Used as music, and it's obviously identified there. That scraping sound. Has something. Certainly a dimension, and if it wasn't there it wouldn't have the same effect or the desired effect. So I love tinkering and playing with stuff that gives you this kind of thing. It's certainly without a shadow of doubt the closest to sort of producing Tangerine Dream style music as well. Again, not that I'm trying to do that, but it just seems that when it comes to incidental music you end up going down that sort of path. So it does really seem that when you're making a certain type of music, it does fall into a category, whether you're trying to avoid it or not. It just somehow happens. And it just isn't produced in the same way as any sort of regular music. It can just carry its own journey, its own path. You know, it can go on as long as you want it to, and end when you want it to, I suppose. You know, I can sit in a trance actually when I start doing music like that. It's quite weird. And this will be the last track I'll play on this video for you. I've called it Flesh Eating. I think because somewhere in the line, somewhere in my thoughts while I was producing this particular piece of music, in the same way as I was doing the others, I think I had that kind of Zombie Flesh Eaters tune in my head or something. And this is a sort of variation of it with a sort of more upbeat type thing going on. I really, you know, again, sometimes I don't know where these things come from, but I called it Flesh Eating anyway. You can have a little listen. And in days gone by, it's quite interesting now, because with this, you know, I've got it collected or saved in my hard drive, you know, my system here. I don't think I'd delete it, you know, there's got no reason to do that. But whether it ever gets sort of put out there as such, I very much doubt it. But I like this kind of knowledge now that I've got the ability to sort of, I don't have to release everything I produce. And you know, sometimes there isn't a place for it either. But I thought in this particular case it was probably interesting to make a video based on music that I did for a soundtrack. And it's just an intervention as it stands at the moment, because I want to carry forward with Making Studio Talk discussions on each of my albums, and Carrigan Wakes obviously deserves to be part of that theme. Though I haven't obviously mentioned or talked about that particular album yet, because I haven't got to that stage yet. But in time I will. But as I say, this particular video has been made because The Isolation Horrors is getting premiered tonight, and I just thought it'd be a good time to perhaps give some other background to something else that was involved in the process of making that film. And I really enjoyed, you know, being involved in the whole thing, you know. So hopefully people will enjoy it, enjoy the music, enjoy the films, the whole thing. You know, it's all very well made, and I think we've done very well actually. And I think we're all enthused by the reviews we've heard so far. So enjoy for those who haven't seen it yet.